Shalom, welcome. This is Avraham Shira for our Erev Shabbat talk for all our friends on Patreon, YouTube, Facebook, and out there in the big wide world. Erev Shabbat is here. We just had two giant blasts of lightning down the valley and the internet zap, it was gone. So amazingly, I went upstairs in our house to the third floor and I got 10 Mbps. The bandwidth was okay up top. So technology is like something you can't really depend on, but we sure try to. Anyways, we are looking at Shabbat and the world to come. We're looking at Sefer Bahir from Rabbi Nechunia ben Hakanah, who is a rabbi and Tanna Kadosh from the generation before Rabbi Akiva. He taught Rabbi Akiva. He was known as a master of the secrets, a master also of spiritual sensitivity. Spiritual sensitivity is when you pick up things that other people don't pick up. And the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Akiva and one of his other friends took a garment that was safek tumah, a garment that is a doubtful bit of tumah attached to it. And they went to Rabbi Nechunia when he was sitting in his meditations, quietly minding his own business. And they wanted to see. They were testing the rabbi, which is like a crazy thing if you think about it, but they took this piece of garment that was safek tumah. It wasn't even for sure impure. And the impurity levels there are many levels, and we don't have to go into that now, but the idea of impurity, just to help us out a little bit, means the lack of life force. In other words, death is simply the lack of life. So when you have life force, you are alive. And then each level below that life force could be called a bit of impurity. A bit of death enters the framework of purity or life force. So they touched him with this garment and he came out of his trance. And the way that he looked at them told them that they had made a mistake, that you don't interrupt people when they're in deep meditation. Because when you're at a level of deep meditation, you enter a super sensitive place in relation to the world. That sounds are much louder, voices are much more cutting or pleasant, for that matter. Lights, colors, everything is much more intensified. We're in that place of meditative trance or contemplation. So this was Rabbi Nechunia, and he was known to be a master of the Merkava Meditation, which is something that we've touched on a little bit in our meditation series on Patreon. We'll probably have to come back. It's more of a thing that I teach one-on-one. I've taught several people one-on-one this discipline called the Merkava Meditation series. It is something that either you're there or you're not. It's not something that you can force or something that you can, cram for like a college final. But rather you have to have a lot of experience and knowledge on your own before you enter into the mysteries of Merkava meditation. But that meditation is also about entering a super sensitive realm called the world to come. Now the world to come, we're going to start with that subject because it's connected to Shabbat, and here we are, Erev Shabbat. So Rabbi Berechia, who is one of the rabbis who reports teachings in the Sefer Bahir, remember, because all the rabbis would gather teachings from the other rabbis that they knew and then put them in a book. So it's never one author per se, it's one collator with many authors. And Rabbi Nechunia brought Rabbi Berechia, who said, each day of the week we speak of the world to come. Do we then understand what we were saying? Olam haba? Because the grammar of that phrase in Aramaic means the world that was. It doesn't talk about the world that will be. If it was the world that would be, it would say Olam sheyavo. But rather it's written in the past tense. Now what do we learn from that? That before the world was created, it arose in God's thought to create an intense light to illuminate the entire world. And this created light that God created. Now remember, this is a light. This is not even God himself. We don't know the infinite and unknowable. That's the very definition we give him, is infinite and unknowable. But we know he created an infinite and a light that was so great, the Bahir says, that no created thing could have authority or endure it. In other words, to use the light, no one had permission, and to endure the light, it was too great, because it's such a light that you would be absorbed into it the minute you touched it. And so what point would there be to creating a human being if the human being was absorbed into a light he could not bear? So the Blessed Holy One saw, however, that the world could not endure the light. He therefore took a seventh of it, 1/7 of that original light of creation, and left it in its place for them. And the rest, 6/7 of the light of the original creation, God put aside for the righteous in the world to come. So the world we exist in now is only 1/7 of the original light. Of course, the worlds have fallen since the moments of creation, as we understand. But this ultimate future that has this primordial light promises to be 6 times greater than the experience of the Garden of Eden itself. Because it's not going to be 6 times this world. This world is the world of darkness, the world of mixtures and falsehood, and the world of delusion and illusion. So the world of heaven, of course, when you leave your body, you enter the non-physical plane. That is a bright realm, but it's still only 1/6 of the original of creation. And Rabbi Nechunia said, if they are worthy of this 7th and keep it, they will give them in the final world. They will get that portion if we're worthy. Now, of course, worthy is a very catchy word. What does it mean if I'm worthy? Do I keep all the Torah? Am I a perfect tzaddik? No. The Rambam says you just have to have 51% goodness. If you fix 51% of yourself, you already jump over the quantum leap of holiness. Okay? And that quantum leap is just, what is it? 2% from evil to good. Shifts the scales. And the Rambam also tells us that one person that could do one mitzvah and completely shift the scales of humanity. So that's how tight God judges the world. That's how sensitive his perception is of our behavior, of our activities. And that can be taken to a very high level of understanding that, wow, you mean one good deed could change the world? Amazing. I want to be that guy. And another person will say, oh no, one bad deed and I destroy the world. And he takes the whole thing on his shoulders and he globalizes it until he can't move. Right? Because if you're afraid to move, of making a mistake, what kind of performance are you going to have? But I think the point, though, of course, is that sensitivity is at this highest realm of revelation. That down here in our bodies, God knows how hard it is to sense anything spiritual. But nonetheless, it is called the world that came, since it already came into existence. The world that will be was. So we're really returning to the past. But it's called the future. So it's not much of a paradox. I think our minds can overcome that idea that we're really going forward to reach the perfection of that was in the past. That light, that primordial perfection that existed before man came onto the stage and started to play with the rules. Now, regarding this, it says in Tehillim 31, how great are your works? Ma tuvcha, ma gadol tuvcha. Right? That you have hidden away for those who fear you. Right? That you have put away those who fear him. Now, fear is another word in English that we really don't want to lean on too heavily, but rather fear is awe. It's awe. It's not fear like I'm afraid that more lightning is going to come down the valley, or I'm afraid if I go to the supermarket, someone's going to have corona. No, that's not that kind of fear. It's the awe of existence. It's the awe of things as they are. It's the awe that there is a creator. The awe that he gave us a Torah, that he made a people, that he gave us a land. It's the awe of being yourself. Can you make you? Well, actually, we can recreate ourselves. That's another whole subject unto itself. Okay, but of course, the real point is that this world that will be is built on the world that comes. That should give us a little more faith in why we keep Shabbat and why we say that Me'olam Haba, Shabbat is a portion, an extraction of the world to come. Because the world to come, you don't eat there, you don't drink there, you don't breathe there, but you exist. You exist as yourself without your body and its agendas. Now you do have a body. You have a body of light. And there is shape. There is formation. And there is gradations of your body of light compared to everyone else. The rabbis teach that in the world to come, Kol tzaddik v'tzaddik yichveh mikchupato shel chavero, that every person, tzaddik, in the world to come, any right will be burnt by the chuppah, the marriage canopy of his friend. Now, what does that mean? Nobody gets burnt by marriage canopies, right? God forbid. Of course, the marriage canopy is a metaphor for your halo, as in Hebrew, it's called hila, which I think is based on the Greek. That the word halo is this, of course, is your aura. It's the light that you create around yourself. That's what you take to the world to come. And so the thing is, most of us don't have the eyes to see it, and there's too many sunglasses on our spiritual vision to understand, to appreciate the different subtleties of the lights of each person. But the rabbis are teaching that in the world to come, when the physicality is transformed, everybody's going to see who everybody really is. And we'll see what guys are really on top and who's on the bottom and who's really holding at the level. Nowadays, unfortunately, we get fooled. We see that there are rabbis that do look very great, and unfortunate things happen. And we see that there are people that are very simple, and we have no idea of their spiritual stature. So that aura that we carry into the world to come is built from the good deeds that we do in this world. And so that becomes like your spiritual condo in the world to come. And it also is the measure of your ability to travel in the world to come. Because some people, they will be good people, and they do earn a portion of that ultimate Shabbat. But that ultimate Shabbat does not necessarily give them permission to fly from world to world and from level to level, and from this yeshiva of Rabbi Akiva to the yeshiva of the Arizal to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. You know, nowadays you just get in your car and drive to the Galil and you can visit everybody. But again, you have to have really sensitive instruments to pick up what's going on there. But you can. And there are ways to accelerate that process. But the greater the spiritual development that you have in this world creates a larger chariot, so to speak, a spiritual vehicle by which you can travel in the world to come. And I can tell you a story that just happened, actually with my mother, who passed away, alav shalom, 3 years ago. Hard to believe. And a friend took my cousin to a psychic medium, not a Jew, a non-Jew who is known to have psychic powers. This is back in Georgia, up in the woods. If you know the Georgia woods, there's psychics up there. And the woman walked in and asked about my aunt. And she said my aunt had very hard trouble transferring from this world to the next world. In other words, part of the difficulty of receiving the world to come is how your soul emerges from this world. And so she said that my aunt had a hard time. And then my cousin asked, well, what about my aunt? That would be my mother. What about her time? And she says, oh, she's having a great time in the world to come. She's traveling everywhere. She's going from place to place. And my sister interpreted that story to mean, because she's got 17 religious grandchildren, living all over the world. And they're keeping Shabbat everywhere they go. And they have a bris here one week and a bar mitzvah there, and then a Shabbat there, and then a wedding over here. And so that gave me a little bit of zip of faith, to to think that my mother, who was not even a religious woman, by the way, she claimed I'm agnostic, I don't know. But it was a humble agnosticism, you know, the kind where I don't know and I'm just afraid of knowing. But there could be a God. You know, that kind of agnosticism is not like the arrogance of the atheist who says there's no God and there's no world to come and you guys are all just fooling yourself. But rather, look what happened. From this woman, this non-Jewish woman who we never met, who never knew any of us, never got any background information, this was her visual take on what was happening for the soul of my mother. So you see, the world to come is something that, as the Gemara says, the one who doesn't get it, the one who doesn't believe in it. So it's still about faith, that we have to believe in something greater than ourselves. And why not? We read the Bahir, he tells us the structure, he takes the structure out of the simple grammar of the words. Olam haba, olam she'yavo. No, it's really the world that was. And that's where we're headed, folks. And it's going to be a greater world than it was in the beginning because it's going to have the sum total of all of humanity's goodness. And the sum total of all the great lights that were in the past up until this day are going to be there. And we want to be part of that. And that's the great wedding. And that's the aspect that we're able to feel, God willing, on Shabbat, especially late at night if you get up alone and you go downstairs in your bathrobe and you take a cup of coffee and you open up a book of Zohar and you just contemplate one idea, and next thing you know, you're off. You're going into different places and different realms. Because that's the way the Torah is designed. It is a multi-layered, structured experience. It is not a book. And so I want to bless everyone with that kind of Shabbat, that kind of hope and faith in your own world to come, in your own good deeds. Because Rabbi Nachman says our biggest problem is not our faith in God. Our biggest problem is our faith in ourselves. And we are part of Him. We are not separate from Him. We might be real far off the center, but you know what? We're still part of Him. And we have faith in ourselves. We're having good faith in the greater aspect of ourselves.